Hello everyone, it's your boy Rage, and in this video, I'll be comparing the Espada to the Quincy. Before I get into the video, I was wondering if you guys could please leave a like and subscribe. It helps my channel and my video. My goal was to hit 50 subs before the end of the month, but thanks to you guys, I hit it in just a few days. So, shout out to you guys. My next goal will be 100 subs, but with that being said, thank you and back to the video. Also, one more thing I want to mention is this video makes me seem that I'm biased and I hate the Espada when that's not the case. My second favorite character in the whole series is Stark. With that out the way, I can actually start the video. I thought about doing this video after seeing some threads of people downplaying the mid-tier Quincy, or any Quincy that wasn't a part of the elite guard. Since the 1000-Year Blood War arc and the introduction of the Quincy's, people ask themselves what if the Espada fought the Quincy's, or what if Espadas like Ulquiorra or Stark survived to see the Quincy's take over Hueco Mundo. The problem with putting the Espada up against the Quincy is that the Quincy's would completely demolish the Espada without any difficulty. People like to downplay the Quincy because most of them aren't as cool and flashy as some of the Espada. Keep in mind, when I'm talking about the Quincy, I mainly mean all the Quincy that aren't a part of the elite guard. A lot of people forget how strong the Gote 13 were before they train and get big amps in the later half of the 1000-Year Blood War. All the Gote 13 members train for 17 months. In fact, as soon as they return to the Soul Society after Aizen is defeated, they start to train. They were so strong that characters like Renji is able to fight base Aizen after his training. And that's a Renji, a lieutenant. Imagine how strong someone like Byakuya or Kenpachi is at this point. Keep in mind, these mid-tier Quincy's beat these captains and lieutenants. So when people say that the Espada would beat the Quincy, you're basically saying the Espada would be on the level of Aizen, or would be above these captains who are able to fight Aizen. You don't have to be a Bleach expert to know that this is wrong. It's just shown to us that all the Espada follow Aizen because he's stronger than them all. I mean, Kubo legit has Gin narrate about how strong Aizen's raw power is. Aizen says that the Espada's power are incredibly inferior to his. People would downplay the Quincy by saying that they're not strong, just that there's a lot of them. The problem with this is, yeah, there's a lot of them, but that doesn't really seem to be the problem. There's countless statements of characters just calling them strong. Now from my memory, I think there's more battles of two Soul Reapers fighting one Quincy at the same time, rather it be the other way around. We have Toshiro and Rangiku versus King Du, Toshiro and Rangiku versus Bazby, Byakuya and Renji versus Asnot, Ion, Kisuke and Ichigo versus Quilgi, Kensei and Rose versus Mask. We got like half the Vizards and some of the Gote 13 versus Valkyrie, Nanao and Shunsui versus Lille, Yoriichi and Kisuke, also with Grimmjow versus Askin, Shinji and Sajin versus Bambi. There's more, but those are just examples. I've seen people say Renji was lying about his statement about being able to fight base Aizen, or him just being wrong because the leap in power is too high. The thing about the fluctuation of power in Bleach is we see a bunch of characters get stronger out of nowhere. A good example is the fact Kenpachi was fighting and struggling with Shikai Ichigo in the Soul Society arc, then fights the 5th Espada who's hundreds of times stronger than that Ichigo. But maybe you can say that's just a Kenpachi thing. Well, we have Byakuya fighting the fastest Espada, who should be faster than Grimmjow, and Grimmjow thinks Ichigo's speed is average in Bankai, when Byakuya got blitzed by this same Ichigo. You could even argue the one that fought Grimmjow was stronger and faster, but let's just say that they're the same. Back to my point, Byakuya got a massive boost in power along with Kenpachi and the other captains, so characters getting massive amps from a previous arc to the next one. Also keep in mind, they reach this power in just a short time compared to the time skip between Hueco Mundo in the Lost Agent arc. You know, maybe the top 3 strongest Espada could do something. Stark, Ukiura, and Yami. Not in order, obviously. Or you know what, let's throw in Baragon since people think he would just age all the Quincy's. So let's go over these characters. Yami is probably the easiest to go over, so I'll talk about him first. Yami's biggest feat is losing to Byakuya and Kenpachi, and the fact he can grow in power as long as he gets angry enough. But let's say for the sake of this discussion that Yami is stronger than Ukiura and he's the strongest Espada, like the databook says. The problem with him is that his fighting capabilities are mid. What I mean by this is that he punches an off-guard Kenpachi with his eye patch on and does minimal damage. Keep in mind, Yami is in his release state, which is supposed to be the strongest Espada at this point. I'm pretty sure Kenpachi calls him an ant or something, but I know he insults him. Zaraki is able to handle him by himself at this point. He doesn't even want to finish him off because of how weak he is. So Yami isn't even equal to base Kenpachi in his first release. Now, before people say that Zaraki was using some of his hidden potential or whatever, at this point in the story, Zaraki is nowhere near that level of power he gets later on. It took Unohana 3 days of killing and healing a stronger Kenpachi just for him to get back to the way he was. When Yami goes into his weird, unconfirmed second release, he gets off-screened. It's up to interpretation on how this battle went down. When we see Byakuya and Kenpachi after the fight, they seem to take a significant amount of damage. Even the data books back this up. But when the Soul Reapers around them ask how the battle went, Kenpachi said it was boring. Kenpachi isn't one to lie about a battle if it was exciting for him. If we look at the previous battles Kenpachi had, we obviously see Kenpachi have a good time and even compliment his enemy. So for Kenpachi to say his battle with Yami was boring should have some value to it. That being said, these Quincy's are far above the likes of this Kenpachi, who beat first release Yami and calls his battle with him in his second release boring. Let's take someone like Mask. Mask is kinda like Yami with the way their powers work, but Mask was able to one-shot Renji, who was strong enough to take on Aizen. Then after Renji goes through his Soul King level training, Mask was able to press Renji to go Bankai in his weird holy form. With all that, Mask would definitely destroy Yami before he could even go into his second release. Even if he started the battle in his second release, the odds wouldn't go into his favor. Let's take a look at Baragon. When people bring him up, they mostly talk about his Raspira. Raspira is probably one of the best abilities in Bleach. The only problem with this is we know it can be overpowered by brute strength alone. If we take a look at the novel statement, it's stated that Kenpachi can possibly cut through Baragon's Raspira. Now this could be a big deal to Quincy's who aren't strong enough to just brute through it, which probably only a few mid-tiers are only able to do. But this is where hacks come in. So people like Mask, Asnot, Bambi, Lloyd could all get around it. Keep in mind, all these Quincy's outspeed and power them by a lot. Maybe you could argue Ukiura could challenge them a bit in his second release, but I'll get to him later. Back to Baragon. His only real asset is his Raspira. Some Quincy's can overpower it, while others can just get around it using their own abilities. Stark and Ukiura are tricky because they mostly bank on the way that you see things in the story. So for Stark, if you think Shunsui didn't get that much stronger from his fight with Stark to his fight with Lille, well, that changes things. You could say Stark could press most Quincy's. Maybe you could say he could push Lille into his holy form, but even then it's debatable. If we look at it that way, that changes things for characters like Baragon as well. He would do a lot better in his fight against the Quincy's. Maybe you could even bring up Hollybell, but that's only if you think Shunsui didn't get that much stronger from his battles with Stark and the dude that looks like Jim Gordon. Now let's go the other route and say he got a significant amp from those two battles. Well, Stark has some pretty good feats himself. He fought 2 top tier captains and 2 visored captains without trying his hardest, almost pushed Shunsui to use Bankai. Shunsui and Jushiro are stated to be transcendent while working together. This is all good until he meets Quincy, who hacks him out. Not only that, but Espadas would definitely need to fight base Quincy in their release state, even if the Espada were strong enough to push them to use their holy form. It's a squash match. Now Ukiura, on the other hand, is probably the closest to the Quincy's when it comes to speed and strength. Or maybe Yami's better than Ukiura when it comes to power. But Ukiura's best way of being able to fight Quincy's is through the Vasto Lorde Ichigo. I recently did a video on Fullbring Ichigo, and in that video I basically said that Ichigo is around Vasto, maybe more if you interpret and use certain things in the story. But for this video, let's say they're equal. So Vasto Lorde Ichigo should be able to do what Fullbring Ichigo did, maybe more if he has his full Shihakusho on. You'd think this sounds good for Ukiura, but no, not one bit. The fight between Ukiura and Ichigo wasn't really a fight, it was a WWE squash match. You might say, why don't we just go with Ichigo being above Fullbring Ichigo? The problem with this is that there's more evidence for Fullbring Ichigo being stronger than Vasto than it being the other way around. The only way you could see Vasto being stronger than Fullbring is if you use the 4th movie, and it's debatable if the movie is canon. I'll get to that in another video. The problem is Ukiura doesn't scale to Vasto Lorde Ichigo, or isn't as strong and powerful, I should say. Vasto wasn't even at full power. Less than half his Shihakusho was ripped off his body. To get back to Ukiura, he's below base Aizen. In fact, Aizen would literally solo the Espada, whereas the Quincy are equivalent, if not stronger, than the captains and lieutenants who can scrap with Aizen. Well, what about Lonzo or Stark's Wolves? The Quincy would never get hit by those attacks, even if they did. Blue is probably the best defense technique in Bleach. It literally saved Royd getting turned to ashes. Vasto Lorde Ichigo was able to stop Lonzo with his bare hand. People confuse DC and AP. These things are completely different. I think an example of this in Bleach would be like in Hueco Mundo. Post Ukiura fight, Ichigo fired a Holified Getsuga Tensho at Yami. Yami got slammed to the ground, but the attack barely cut through his skin, where we see Kenpachi could easily cut through the limbs of Yami, but has less impact. It's a weird example, but you should get the gist of what I'm trying to say. So even if Lonzo was used, Ukiura isn't fast enough to tag them, and it's not strong enough to actually kill them, or at least most of them. They could just tank it with Blue, as well as the Wolves from Stark. Stark's Wolves, it took a few of them, or I should say a good amount, to blow away Love and Rose's mask off. And I doubt Love and Rose have better defense than Quincy, who are above or on par with captains who can fight base Aizen. If you don't like the power scale type of way, well, if you just read or watch the anime, it's just simple. They're played up to be a much bigger threat. The first evasion just eclipses anything that Espada have done. Maybe you could argue Ukiura's battle with Ichigo, but that might be a stretch. From what we see, all the captains and lieutenants lose their battles. Now, people also like to bring up, oh well, the Quincy had their Bankai. The only Quincy to ever use their stolen Bankai against their captain is Asnot, and even before that, all the other captains just lose their battles, except maybe the dude that fought Shunsui. But even before the Quincy stole their Bankai, it was just stated by like Byakuya and Shunsui multiple times that they needed their Bankai just to beat them in base. I'm not gonna break down a whole Espada versus a Quincy like point by point. I'll get to that in another video. There's probably some highball statements you can use to put Espada on the level of Quincy, It's really hard to argue that the Espada would actually stand a chance, because if you do, it kind of breaks the narrative a little bit. Anyways, that's all for the video. If you guys think I missed or overlooked something, please let me know in the comments down below. If you think I'm an Espada hater or just was fully biased in this video, let me know down below. If you guys could please leave a like and subscribe, I'd be very grateful. Thank you and have a rainy day.